Where did you start? When did martial arts start for you?
Martial arts started when I was around 7 years old is when I got into jiu-jitsu. Before that, my dad started training me and my brother together. Um, my brother and I grew up training mainly like judo. My dad was he did judo and Russian sambo.
Oh,
He
wow.
was born in Ukraine, and that was his background. And he was also a amateur boxer as well. So all my boxing and everything kind of started from there. And my whole life, I really was just focusing on boxing and didn't really make the switch to mixed martial arts until about 16 years old. But my whole goal and aspiration was to always be a boxer, until I realized like how much I really loved wrestling and how much I loved jiu-jitsu and the grappling aspect of martial arts. And it was just something that I really fell in love with. And the transition was really smooth for me because I grew up boxing and wrestling kind of at the same time. I would box in the summer, wrestle in the winter, and that's kind of how I grew up. And I realized how much I really loved that wrestling aspect. And then when I was 16, I also joined Nashville MMA, where I used to train at. And that's where I started getting more and more into jiu-jitsu and seeing the actual art of how dangerous it can be. And yeah, same thing, I fell in love with the game, and been at it ever since.
So your brother fights too?
No, he doesn't anymore. So he went off to college as soon as he turned 18, and he kind of left the martial arts path. Same thing, he had around 60 or 70 boxing amateur fights. But it wasn't for him. But he still has some techniques left, and he's trying to get back into like jiu-jitsu. And but he's a cop right now. So
Okay, cool, cool. So you're in the PFL. You have 7 wins and 0 losses. Is the PFL like? Do you intend to move to the UFC or you stay with the PFL? They're pretty much similar events.
I love PFR right now, and they're treating me well. I have no complaints whatsoever. My contracts are smooth. My contracts are good. I have, just it's a great promotion, and they treat the fighters really well. Especially for me, with a fighter that's just an up and comer with only 7 fights. No other promotion in the world would treat me the way that I'm getting treated right now. Down the line, never say never, but right now I love PFL and I'm focused on PFL. And if it continues being like that, maybe I'll stay here.
Cool. And I see a lot of your fights, most of your fights are finishes. Um, are you more focused on ground or how, striking versus ground? How do you train? I see you like the Darcy choke. Finished a couple guys with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, always, what people want nowadays are finishes, but I don't really make myself too hung up on that, and I just go out there and I implement my game plan and make sure that I'm just doing what I'm comfortable with. I feel like I'm very well rounded in all aspects of the game. I don't really have um, a place where I'm like not comfortable in. I'm comfortable on the feet striking, and I'm comfortable on the ground grappling. Regardless if I need to control, if I need to go for a submission, either way I can just do it. So I just feel like that's one of the biggest parts of my game is being well rounded and being able to basically dominate or be better than at any position, whether it's on the feet or on the ground.
You're training at Kill Cliff right now?
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
so you probably have some really good sparring partners, coaches, and a lot of pro
Of course,
guys there,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, Robbie Lawler. He's been stepping up. He's one of our primary coaches now. Of course, we got Sean Soriano, Dieter Navarro. We got Henry Hooft, obviously a legend. And yeah, it's then we got guys like Herbert Burns, Gilbert Burns. They're kind of like our team leaders there. They help us out with jiu-jitsu. They help us out with just basic groundwork, MMA. And yeah, it's great having a team that you can really rely on like that, especially when you have so many high level athletes coming in and out. For example, like Michael Chandler, I grew up training with a lot. He's kind of the reason I got to Kill Cliff. And we just have so many high level guys that I can just rely on, and I've learned so much throughout the almost 4 years that I've been at Kill Cliff, and I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah. I think I saw a picture of you with Chandler on your
Yeah,
Instagram. Yeah.
yeah.
How is it training with him?
It's great. I've learned so much. He's kind of like adopted me like under his wing. I started training with him back in Nashville when he opened up his own gym. And yeah, as an 18-year-old kid, I started training with him because I was one of the better people at the gym. And yeah, one day I saw he was training what used to be called Sanford MMA, and I was like, hey, could I come there for like a week, maybe two? And he hit up the head coach Henry Hooft, and I came over there, and Henry liked what he saw, and yeah, I was basically always welcome back.
And what were your hardest fights, despite no losses? Was there a fight that you had a lot of difficulty with?
I would 100% say my second pro fight. I came in, so I was in the process of moving to South Florida from Tennessee. So I did 2 weeks of my camp in Nashville, and then the last two I did here in Florida. And when I moved here to Florida, I got really sick, and that was a really tough decision to make. I was really close to pulling out of the fight, but I just moved, and I was still young. I needed money. I needed to fight, and so yeah, I was going in and the fight maybe 40-50% of what I am, and it was rough. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like my lungs were closing, and the fatigue would just settle in real quick. And I was fighting a guy in his own home crowd, and I pulled a split decision off actually in my second fight. And yeah, that was definitely my toughest fight, not because the guy was great. It was because I was not even close to being healthy. So yeah, I would say that would definitely be one of my hardest moments. But in a way, I almost see it as a blessing because now I know that a fight camp really can't get worse than that. At least in the way that I felt physically. So, it almost gave me a boost of confidence that every other fight that I'm now getting ready for and getting prepared for, like, there's nothing that can get into my way of being able to perform, because that was like the lowest of the low of how I actually felt.
So was there a point in time in that fight that you had some voices saying, "Oh, I wish I could give up"?
I don't feel like I really have that. I did definitely have, in the back of your head, you're like, the time just goes on forever. The clock, you just like, I'm just praying that the clock just runs out, and you're just waiting to hear that 10-second knock, and you just like, yeah, by the third round I was just holding this guy up against the cage, and I remember, I think it was like the last 2 minutes, and he obviously wanted to finish because most of the fight I was getting takedowns. I think I had like a crazy amount of top control. I had like 9 or 10 minutes of top control in 15 minutes. So I was always getting the takedowns and staying on top. And I remember I was so gassed in that last round that, my arms were just giving out, my legs were giving out, but in the back of my head, I was still swinging, I was still trying to fight, but it just like my body wouldn't let me. And I remember hugging him up against the cage, and I was just like, man, I'm waiting for that 10-second mark. And after the fight, like, I couldn't even move. I had to go to the hospital. Like, I was super dehydrated. It was like, yeah, it was definitely one of the hardest things. But again, I'm grateful for that experience.
Did you have to cut weight on top of all that?
Yeah, so I was basically on bed rest. I was that sick for a whole week before the fight, and
Right.
yeah, I couldn't even walk. I couldn't move, and on top of that, obviously my body was naturally kind of dehydrating itself, and it yeah, I was basically, I think I lost around like 8 or 10 pounds from the sickness alone, and yeah, I just was not great for my body.
So I was going to ask you, like, how do you deal with nerves and anxiety and all this stuff? But competing at a young age helps a lot. but you also went through hell in this fight. So I guess like it
Yeah.
helps a lot in your next fights. How
Right.
do you enter the cage? Like when do you get some, a little bit nervous or you
Of
don't?
course, I feel like everyone gets nervous. It's part of it, but it's just how you use those nerves and how you use them into your fight and what you transition them into. I feel like most of the time, like when you're making that walk, like before you walk out, I think that's like the most nerve-wracking thing. It's just like I've been practicing a lot of mental stuff and always talking to myself and always speaking things out loud when I'm behind the stage and when I'm in the cage when they're introducing my name, my opponent's name. I just look at them across the cage and I just talk to myself and I give myself little phrases that help me stay focused and help me stay locked in.
Wow. What about injuries? Worst injuries?
Worst injuries. Probably when I was 16, I tore my meniscus. It was actually, I think, like the first month of wrestling season or something like that. But that actually ended up being the best wrestling season I had. So I tore my meniscus. I was out for like half of the wrestling season basically, and then as soon as I came back, that was when the state regional qualifiers were, and I qualified for states, and then it was the very first time that I ever medaled in state, and I got third place. It was like,
Mm.
yeah, I did really well, and even with the adversity of having a surgery, coming off a surgery, so that was probably the worst injury I've had.
Well, so we have people that follow us. We send stuff out and they ask questions and they say, "Hey, I want to ask fighters different questions." And we had some questions that we actually marked down. They're kind
Really?
of crazy questions, right? But
Okay,
some are
let's hear 'em.
funny. Yeah, and so we ask sometimes in this interviews, like one guy asked, like, who would you date if you were Elias Topuria?
Who would I date if I was what? Could you repeat that?
Elias Topuria, now that he's single.
Who should he
Who,
date?
yeah, if you were him, who would you
Um,
date?
well, I have a beautiful fiance, so I'll date
There you
her.
go. There you go. Perfect answer. She's sitting next to you.
Yep.
The other question that's, if you were in a night out and you needed a wingman, you had a wingman, you could pick Sean Strickland or Nate Diaz.
John Strickland or Nate Diaz? Oh, that's
Tough
pretty tough.
one.
I think Sean Strickland, just because yeah, I feel like he's bigger, just in general. Yeah, I'd probably go with Sean Strickland. I think he carries too. Yeah, definitely Sean Strickland.
The other question we had was like if you would fight Mackenzie Dern, but you had to tie your right hand, couldn't use it.
I'd tie my right hand. Okay. Would I win? Is that the question?
No, I mean, would you fight her
Would I fight her?
with one hand?
Would I fight her with one? I'd give it a try. Why not? She might submit me, but it's all right.
And the other one was I don't know if you know what's going on in New York City, or was going on, it's still going on. I think these crazy kids sucker punch old ladies, old people, and they knock
Oh,
them out.
jeez.
Do you know about that?
I have not heard about that. That
It,
sounds horrible,
it,
though.
if you Google it, you'll see it. It happens a lot in New York City. It was something going on. What would you do if you saw something like that happen in front of you?
I mean, that's if a kid punched an old lady or an old man, bro.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's criminal. Like, I'd have to chase him down. I mean, I don't see like they'd have to actually sit there and pay for what they actually did and make sure that they learned a lesson because there's not yeah no there's no excuse for punching an elderly person or a woman or just any person that's not ready for you to that hasn't done anything to you or hasn't provoked you or hasn't even touched you. um yeah, no, that's criminal. Those kids should be locked up. That's horrible.
yeah. What are your thoughts on fights getting rigged? I'm sure you watched the
Uh,
UFC and saw that stuff going on.
hmm. Yeah, I mean, I could see where they're coming from, but it's also I feel like people are trying to blow it out of proportion. Like they're trying to dig back into like older fights and like yeah, I'm sure there's always going to be corruption in every single sport. There's going to be people payouts and higher up people offering other people money to lose and whatnot. I feel like that's going to be in every single sport.
Yeah,
That's you know people talk about that like in football that it's all rigged and they already have a winner, plan out winner. Like it's you can't really. I feel like when there's powerful enough people, first off, you can't really do much to stop it, and second off, it's just more of the player's integrity or the fighter's integrity. It's not really, if I don't see anything too wrong with it. If the fighter wants to take a a dive for it, it's not something I would do. But if it's something that they feel like it's necessary to feed their family or whatever, go for it. But it's just something that I could never do. I guess as a man is have that kind of in the back of my mind that I'm just taking a dive for an X amount of money. That's just not me and not who I am. But to everyone their own.
have you ever been eye poked in one of your fights?
No, I have not.
What did you think of the fight with Aspinall and Cyril Gane?
I mean, it was pretty nasty eye poke, and yeah, I mean, Tom Aspinall had all the right to take that fight and or take all the 5 minutes and then not proceed because I mean, as we saw the replay, those fingers were all the way in there, and you got to control your own weapon. So Cyril Gane didn't do that, and Tom Aspinall he didn't have to continue, and he didn't. So
Yeah.
I respect his decision.
What's your prediction in the fight? There are two fights. One, Islam Makhachev against Madalena,
Um,
and Merab against Peter Yan. What are your
I think
thoughts on those fights?
Marab definitely beats Peter Yan. And I think Islam, it's gonna be that's a tough one. We're gonna have to see how Islam adjusts to welterweight. But I think it's gonna be good. I think if JDM doesn't come out there and hurt him really early on, that Islam's gonna do really well because I think Islam has really good striking, especially for those Dagestani people. He has some of the better striking, and yeah, obviously we know how lethal his wrestling, and how well he mixes up his striking with his grappling. And people say like well, JDM beat Bilal. Which yes, JDM did really well against Bilal, but Bilal, I don't feel like he mixes up his striking with his takedowns as well as Islam does. So I feel like JDM's going to have a bit more of a problem going against Islam in that aspect.
What about maybe next year we're going to have a fight, Alex Pereira, Poatan, and John Jones. What are your
Well,
thoughts
that's a
on
tough
that?
one. See, I don't know because John Jones has been so inactive for a while. It's really hard to predict a fight like that. It could be the downfall of John Jones if he does take that fight, but also he's just it's when someone's been that dominant for that long, it's hard to bet against those kind of people. But he's getting older, so I really it's a 50-50 for me.
Okay. And do you want to give a shout out to your sponsors, the people that helped you, PFL?
Oh yeah, shout out to PFL, shout out to my manager Steve Swedish, shout out to my fiance. She's always here and helping me out throughout everything. And then, yeah, if you guys want to follow me, Instagram Alexei Pergrande and TikTok as well, Alexei Pergrande.
Perfect. Alexei, thank you very much for your time.